now being recorded. Now, I'm happy to introduce Tom Schneider, the Executive Director of RIoT.
All right, thank you, Chris, and thanks to all of you for coming to what is RIoT's first in-person event. Now, understand most of our audience is virtual, and we're really excited to have you streaming in from wherever you might be. But we do have a very small group of people here in the room at Kiln in Boulder, Colorado. I'm Tom Schneider. I lead RIoT. We are an economic development focused nonprofit. We've been planning an event in Colorado and had the good fortune of meeting up with the Boulder Startup Week folks and thought we'd bring this together as a collaborative event. So thank you for being here. Real briefly, who we are, we're an economic development focused nonprofit organization. Essentially, we have a fundamental belief that the best jobs are new tech jobs. Where emerging technologies come about is where the most interesting new jobs are, but it's also fundamentally the things that steer the economy. So you've all heard these terms, industrial revolutions, right? You know, the second industrial revolution. You'll probably learn the first one in grade school was steam power, and and it created an agrarian society turned into a mechanized and urban society, and then electricity came along and changed the game for everything that we did, and you'd never go back to living without electricity again. And then information technology came, and that was the third revolution, and it completely changed the game. And we believe right now we're in a shift to real-time data. And the data economy, what we used to call IoT a few years ago, is really fundamentally changing every industry, and that's where new jobs are created, that's where new wealth gets generated. And so today's event is really to talk about emerging technology and how it's changing different industries. And we've got a number of different experts that will be coming up and talking, but our job as RIoT is to bring folks together. We're a convener. We run on the order of 75 or so events per year around the country. This is what we call, I think on the first slide, I think it said RIoT 56 is the 56th kind of really large format event that we've done since 2014 when we formed. But it's our first year in Colorado. We're a small team, but we get a lot done, and we get a lot done because we're really good at collaboration. And we believe that to capture the market opportunity that new technologies present, you don't try and do everything at once. You figure out, what is it that I'm really good at? What problem can I solve for a customer? And then how do you find the right collaborators to work together with? And so we're expert kind of connectors and conveners, and we're excited to be building new relationships as we've now launched a team here in Colorado. In the spirit of collaboration, though, we're excited to be working with Boulder Startup Week, and that is happening because of massive volunteer effort across lots of folks. My colleague Chris Meyer, who you hear from in a moment, I think for 7 straight years has run the IoT track at this event, but it also involves important sponsorship from folks like Techstars and the others that you see here on the screen. So we want to thank them. RIoT, likewise, is a consortium-driven organization. We've got about 90 corporate partners. Many of them are household name companies, as you see on the screen. Many are experts in specific fields or in providing technologies or services, the platforms upon which every company grows. And so part of what we do as an organization is help entrepreneurs and startups to understand, solve your customer's need, but don't reinvent cloud or don't reinvent connectivity. Let's find the right technology platform providers, and in some case, find the right resource providers in, whether it's legal and accounting or business functions, or it's in other technology areas, software development, engineering, and so on. Today, we're coming to you from Kiln in Boulder, Colorado. The Kiln team has been fantastic to work with. They've been extremely welcoming to our organization. This is a co-working facility. If you are looking at how do I start to emerge from COVID and start to, to get out and to meet people again, to network, to work in a really collaborative environment, definitely encourage you to check it out. As I said, we've got a few people here in the room. They're lucky enough to also reap the benefits of our friends at Twilio, who have provided some refreshments for those here in the room. If you're watching online, I hope that you'll crack a beer. If you have some pretzels, we've got pretzels here. Raid the cabinet, but feel free to enjoy as we get through this program. What I want to say just for a few minutes before we introduce Governor Polis is kind of fundamentally what we see as we work in the market and work with all these sponsors and work with the hundreds of startup companies that we have supported over the year through our startup accelerator, where we see technology going. Fundamentally, we're coming out of the information age. We've heard this term, it was a buzzword back 20 years ago, as we were riding the dot-com bubble and this internet economy. It was all built around that we had the world's information at our fingertips. And if you have all of the information accessible through a device over the internet, you could do some pretty interesting things. What I think is fundamentally different, though, is it's one thing to be able to web crawl the information and to use search and our social media feeds and all the kind of big industries that came out of the information age. But now we're really talking about data. And fundamentally, the difference, in my view, is information is something that has been already parsed into some level of intelligence. Data, when it's first generated, and it's generally generated at a sensor, whether that's a temperature measurement or it's a camera image or it's an audio feed, sensors create data instantaneously in the world around us, in hardware devices of many different kinds. But that data doesn't necessarily mean anything until we start to apply the AI and the machine learning and the analytics of what might that data mean in this context. And as we can start to analyze that data in real time, we can start to do things autonomously. We can do things with instantaneous, near zero latency. Think of autonomous vehicles and drones being able to navigate by just collecting information around them, communicating short range with each other, doing interesting things that kind of automate the world. And I believe that when we look back, generations from now on this fourth industrial revolution, what we will recognize is, how did we ever live without automation, without instantaneous automation in every area? How might we remember the days of, I went to the doctor like twice this year, and they put the little clip on my finger and they got an SpO2 reading, and they, I got my weight on the scale and my height, and they took 3 or 4 data points and then gave me mission critical advice about what I should be doing in managing my health. Wouldn't it be better to have real-time information 24/7, 365 of what's happening, and instantaneous alerts or reactions or automated responses to a health situation that might be a critical health situation? Thinking to what the potential that is brought about by near zero cost computing today, near zero cost wireless transmission of data that we have through 4G and 5G kinds of technologies, the incredibly low cost we have in sensing technologies because of advances in nanoscale manufacturing. We can start to now collect data at almost zero cost, move the data to where we need to analyze it, whether it's at the edge or in the cloud at near zero cost. We can start to do the actual analytics at near zero cost. And as entrepreneurs, when the technology tools don't really cost much, it means anybody can be an innovator to create some new automated solution, whether it's a healthcare solution or transportation or energy or whatever the sector might be. When anyone can be an entrepreneur, we have an opportunity for massive innovation. We're entering a period that will roll out over the next decade or two, where you don't have to be a deep-pocketed tier 1 research university. You don't have to be a federal government. You don't have to be a massive entity to do really, really interesting creative things. But what I argue you do need is to leverage these low-cost technology tools and platforms, and then collaborate. Find people to work with, find organizations to work with, and and fundamentally that's some of what RIoT does. We're based in North Carolina. We have employees in various states around the U.S., but we've really had been thinking for a while that we wanted to bring our startup accelerator programs and our educational workshops and other things out to the western part of the United States, and we were trying to figure out where did we want to do that. And And we just kept hearing these incredible things about what was happening in Colorado. So last August, we hired Chris Meyer, who you'll meet in a moment, to join our team. He's based here in Boulder. We also have a couple of employees out in Winter Park, and we have some initiatives, some broadband initiatives and other things that we're doing that lead to entrepreneurial activities in some of the smaller counties in the state. And we're really growing. And what was attractive to us about this place, and I apologize to the, this is Boulder Startup Week. I think this is a picture of Denver. We can call that a suburb of Boulder maybe. But what was really attractive to us about Colorado was that fundamentally, I think the places that are going to be the leaders in this data economy are those that have a lot of talent and that have a variety of markets. Because the technology platform tools actually kind of scale horizontally. The same kinds of things that you might do in a smart agriculture application, in how you deploy some sensors, connect that data, analyze it. The fundamental kind of framework of what that looks like from a technology solution is not that different than what you might do in a smart first responder application or something in a different market space. And so places that have a variety of different markets, a diversity of talent and experiences are the kinds of places that we see moving forward faster. And so we're happy to be kind of coming into this market. We're not here to replace anyone. We run an accelerator. Techstars is one of the sponsors of this event. They run an accelerator. We've had teams in the past that have gone through their program and then come to ours, and vice versa. We're very collaborative. We're not here to duplicate what others are doing, but to be kind of a complementary resource in capturing the opportunity of this data economy. So I'm thankful to be here. I do a time check here to see. We got two minutes until the governor should be arriving. I'll pause real quickly. Any thoughts, questions, or anything before Governor Polis takes the stage? Thank you. Love it here. Yeah. So as I mentioned, we're 501c3. We, on the RIoT side of the business, when you saw the team, we're just shy of 10 employees, and we are about 60% funded through corporate sponsorships. So those are the companies that want to work with entrepreneurs that they know, if I can offer them the right cloud services or the right connectivity or the right engineering service in the right way, this company that gets off its feet and grows is going to eventually be a valuable customer for me. So we pipeline there. And then the balance is about half some government contracts and then half grants. We do have some economic development style grants. In our history, we have worked formally and informally with hundreds of companies that collectively in North Carolina, where we started, have created about 750 jobs, raised about $400 million in capital. We are not investors. So all of our programs are 100% free. We never take equity. We never own IP. We help to liaise to those venture communities and other places. But our job is to create jobs is our goal. And if we do that well, it increases the tax base, and that's why some municipalities and others provide some of the funding that underwrites us.
So Tom, I have one question from Henley Lai from our digital audience here. You said you mentioned that we're in the data age with all the information available to us now. How do we avoid being overwhelmed by all of it? And I think this might be the one question we can answer before the governor pops on. So if anybody has a question, throw that in chat and we'll get to it as we can, especially as our panelists come on. So Tom?
Yeah, thanks. It's a gregreat question. There's a lot of things that we're going to learn. You've heard the term disruptive technology. Like that word disruptive comes about because we learn as we go, and there are things that we don't know how to solve yet that we need to solve. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in both security, cybersecurity in particular, and then in privacy spaces. To some degree, we're going to rely on the machines to sift through the massive reams of data and help to sift the signal from the noise. But I really don't believe that automation is scary. I think that the humans are always still in the loop. We are helping to make sure that these systems as they go enrich and kind of better our lives. When you think about augmenting, I'm wearing glasses right now, and that helps me to see more clearly. I wouldn't go back to not augmenting with this kind of technology. Soon, augmented reality and uses of data are going to be applied into our glasses, and we're going to see additional information that's going to feel weird and socially incongruent for a while. And then over time, we're going to
So, Tom, I don't want to interrupt you, but we have Governor Polis joining us right now. Governor Polis, can you hear me okay? It looks like he's got his microphone about to come on.
All right, welcome, Governor Polis. We'd love to hear a few words.
So we're going to give you a second to do it that way. And so we should see his feed come up here in just a second. Tom, if you want to mute your microphone, and then we'll test out what a hybrid event looks and feels like. So, Tom, it looks like the governor dropped there. So, yeah, why don't you, do you need a refresher on the question?
All right, so we'll get the governor back in a moment. We lost his signal. Hopefully he'll be back in any moment. But in the meantime, yeah, this is one of those moments of experimentation, right? How do you do something hybrid where you have some people that are together in a room, some people that are remote, everybody is getting kind of a fair and equitable opportunity to participate.
Oh, hey, Governor, looks like we can see you again.
All right, welcome, Governor Polis.
Marvelous.
Hi.
Welcome. You're on the big screen here.
Whoa, hello everybody. Is there a big screen?
There is. You're on a 20-foot screen right now, although I'm pulling it up right now. So give me a second.
Oh my goodness, and I'm out of focus too. Let me turn off and turn on. Oh, there we go. Nice and sharp. Hi everybody. Good to see everybody. Well, should I just start, or do I have an introduction from Tom?
We've been talking about you for a little while, so I think you're good,
Okay.
good to go now.
Well, thank you, Tom, and thanks for the kind introduction. 12th Boulder Startup Week, a little different. I hope to join you in person rather than big screen next time. I want to thank, of course, the title sponsor, Techstars, Glider, Denver South Economic Partnership, Kiln, the track sponsors, the University of Colorado Boulder, Gary Community Investments, Name.com, Stream, Technical Integrity, and Revent, and all the organizers who put in a lot of work. And I want to thank you for doing this. Back in 2005, when David Brown, David Cohen, Brad Feld, and myself got together and co-founded Techstars, we really wanted to do our part to help Boulder be a successful startup community. Obviously, the vision grew far beyond Boulder, but it started first and foremost in our backyard to accelerate, support the success and access to capital for entrepreneurs. It's really exciting to see now, 16 years later, the success of the entire Denver metro region, Fort Collins, Boulder, Colorado Springs, Denver, as a nationally recognized startup hub with all of the ecosystem of support, legal, financial, technical, that go into that. And of course, it's never easy for today's founders, but I do want today's founders to know that there are a lot more resources in the area than there were 15 or 20 years ago. And hopefully we'll continue that virtuous cycle, because founders who have successful exits often become angel investors, board members of the next generation of startups in their own backyard. And whether you're just at the beginning stage of your business or considering starting a business, or your startup is already expanding, raising capital and expanding into global markets, I know that each business faces a set of challenges. And this year, we've also, on top of that, all faced the challenge of operational challenges during COVID. As we work to build back stronger, it's really a catalyst for change, and how we can find new opportunities that emerge from the way we've lived over the last year. We're being driven by data, by technology. In Colorado, we have so many organizations in many industries, a strong entrepreneurial culture, great innovations in healthcare and advanced manufacturing and aerospace and food technology and energy and industries that haven't been created yet. We hope to be a center of quantum computing here in Colorado, a market that we hope will become a significant one in the coming years. And one of the things that we do from the state side and the governor side is, of course, support entrepreneurs by having great research at our institutions of higher education, looking at industries like advanced tech and information to see how we can better align state policies to their needs. We were able to create a safe harbor around token transactions with distributed ledger technology and digital currency. And we want to make sure that we remain a hospitable environment for innovation in our state, that our research universities are key drivers through tech transfer, as well as preparing students and grad students to be highly skilled founders and workers at startups. And of course, also through our Advanced Industry Accelerator program that helps match early capital for early stage businesses in key tech sectors, requiring a 2-to-1 match from outside investors in the state. That kind of public-private partnership is a big part of giving Colorado a competitive advantage, right? We look for why start your company in Colorado instead of California or Texas. And there's a lot of reasons. Number one, our mountains, our way of life, access to world-class skiing and rafting and biking and hiking. Another is the talented people that live in Colorado and the talented people that want to move to Colorado, right? Not as many people are lining up to move to Texas or California, but we have a great reputation in the national and international marketplace for having an unparalleled quality of life. And that's a big part of attracting skilled professionals to Colorado as well. So building our own, attracting the best and brightest from around the world, growing jobs, in a diversified economy, of which the entrepreneurial sector and the tech sector are absolutely key. Our Boulder community, my hometown, was also recently rocked by the tragedy of the King Soopers shooting, and many of you might have known victims firsthand. I have many friends who knew several of the victims personally, because Boulder, at the end of the day, is a small, tight-knit community. But whether you knew any of the victims directly or personally or not, I also want to thank Boulder Startup Week for donating to the Boulder County Crisis Fund, really to help the victims' families in their time of need. And one of the hardest things I have to do as governor is I went to 6 funerals of the victims of the shooting, just as I did for the victims of the school shooting at the STEM school massacre and others. So been to too many funerals, and I know that those victim families appreciate the help of Boulder Startup Week to assist them in their difficult time. Thank you for this opportunity to join you virtually. I'm really excited to work with all of you to weather this current public health and economic crisis, to find the entrepreneurial disruption that allows for a even better new normal in so many ways, and building strong and innovative communities across our state. And I want to thank you and say stay safe, be well, and be innovative. We'll turn it over to Tom, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to have them.
All right, thank you, Governor Polis. Do we have any questions while we have a moment for him? Chris, watch the chat window, please. Yes, right here. So the question is, how is the state changing its strategy post-COVID to support entrepreneurs and startups and young enterprises?
One thing we're certainly pushing is location-independent employment. I mean, our state alone, we're going to decrease, for our state employees, we have 31,000 employees, do everything from give you driver's licenses to protect our streets. We are reducing our office square footage by 1 million square feet for the state, because we're going to about 20% of our workforce will be telecommuting. Before the pandemic, it was 1%. It got as high as 70%. That hurt productivity. We feel we can optimize productivity and reduce costs at about 20%. But we also believe that location-independent employment is great for our rural economies as well. And we'd love for people to be able to live in, some of those beautiful areas in the country, in Steamboat Springs or Pagosa or Durango or Montrose or Grand Junction, and be able to participate in global marketplaces as innovators. And a key part of that is rural broadband, which we're heavily investing in, but also just having the startup infrastructure to support location-independent employment and entrepreneurship.
All right, other questions?
Tom, there's one coming in from our digital audience here from Henry Lai. He's curious, Governor, if there is any initiatives to make government data accessible for other startups, particularly civic data at the local levels, i.e. cities and counties.
Yeah, we would love to. Maybe if there's anything at the state level that is public information, but we haven't created an API for, let us know. We'd love, if there's value in it, we'd love to make that more accessible. At the local level, generally they do it themselves. Now that doesn't mean that the state can't pass a law that requires some form of standardization for publicly available data through an API, but they haven't done that yet. So that might be an idea to talk to state legislators about. Of course, cities will say that costs us money, or it's an unfunded mandate, or you're going to help pay us to do it. But if there's value in it, it might be worth pursuing. Certainly at the state level, please make me aware. You can do it in the chat or wherever. You can follow up with the organizers. You can pass it along to me. You can email it for me to ali.cox@state.co.us. That's my assistant. If there's something at the state level that you're having trouble accessing that is public.
Thank you so much, Governor. I think we have time for one more question if you're amenable here. There's a question from Christina Patricio. Sorry if I butchered that pronunciation. But what are some initiatives in Colorado working on bringing greater amounts of technical talent here to the state?
Well, I did see that F did that. I saw that photoshopped one with me as a boarder or a skier with looking cool, and I think maybe F lives in Wyoming but wants to move here. I can't remember. I didn't follow the whole give and take, but we'd be thrilled to have you here, F. And I do ski. I've been skiing since I was 4 years old. My kids are 9 and 6, and they're now skiing. I don't board, but my dad and my sister both are boarders. So we want to bring to greater homegrown talent as well as attracting talent from across the country. We have different competitive advantages compared to different states. First of all, we're a relatively low tax state, 4.58%. We just lowered it from 4.63 to 4.58. I'd like to lower it even more if we can. But we actually have rising housing costs. So we're not as bad as California, but we are more expensive than Texas for housing, looking at competitive markets. So we are trying to unlock some of the state-owned land to be available for housing. We're looking at making significant transformational investments in more housing from one-time stimulus funds. We're also working on a historic infrastructure package, including charging stations and green infrastructure to make it quicker and easier to commute. So, I'd say that the quality of life is unparalleled. It's low to medium cost of living. It's probably lower than, as I said, California and New York. But we have to act to keep it that way. But because we're so attractive, we're victims of our own success. And the more people coming here, the more demand, the higher housing prices are. So those are some of the things that we're working on. And thank you all for joining us. And thank you for being innovative. And look forward to seeing some of your ideas transform the world. And have a great day.
Yeah, thank you so much. And the great thing about a live audience is we can applaud.
We have actual applause from real people. So thank you so much, Governor, for joining us.
See you in person.
Thank you. So, yeah, fantastic remarks. At this point, I'm going to hand off to Chris. We're going to trade spots. Going to let Chris introduce himself and bring some of our experts up to talk about just what they're seeing in this kind of emerging tech space, what kind of innovations are coming about, what what is changing in the work environment, and what we might expect post-COVID. So, Chris, I'm going to ask you to come up to the stage.
Yeah, so this is kind of the fun part because I'm both making sure that the stream is correct while I ask our panelists to come up here and take your seats. Yeah. So people want to come in, you're more than welcome to do so. So I think, Kevin, we have the order set up. And then Roland, you're going to be on the couch and you're over on the side, Eric. There's a reason behind it. Can I go back one, Tom? And that's why. Now you're in relative. Oh, wait. So Ashley and Roland need to switch places, and then we're all set. So one of the fun parts about doing this digitally is we have Patrick French from Cardinal Peak that's joining us remotely. So this makes the hybrid event experiment real in actuality. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists here to introduce themselves first, and then we're going to go into kind of some of the conversation around data economy and the reason we're here. Am I not getting the symbol that I'm out of frame? Who am I? Yeah, I guess I should. Tom, well, I guess it's up to me now, huh? Awesome. So welcome, everybody. I kind of forget that I have to do that from time to time. So I'm Chris Meyer. I'm the Director of Partnerships at RIoT. At the beginning, they mentioned that this is my 7th year running the Internet of Things track for Boulder Startup Week. I owe a lot of where I'm at today to this community. I started purely software, writing tax software for the Department of Revenue in Wisconsin. And then because of Boulder Startup Week, I started to understand supply chain components, and then eventually connived my way into being the head of R&D at Sphero, which is a robotics company here locally that spun out into Misty Robotics. But all of that knowledge and all that stuff is just from these conversations, these types of events, just connecting with people that knew and continue to know a lot more than I do. But so I'm eternally grateful for this community, and I'm happy to have all of our panelists here that obviously know more than I do. So to that vein, I'd like them to introduce themselves. If you'd like to say who you are and the organizations that you represent, and then we'll kind of dig into some of the deeper questions. So Kevin, you want to start out?
Sure. Hi, I'm Kevin Carpenter, and I'm the CTO of a company called Porticos. I prepared 2 or 3 slides so that I could tell you what Porticos is. Porticos is the first mile of the data economy. You need data. You need a device that generates data, and you need a way for that data to be transmitted. Then you can act on it. You can aggregate it. You can reduce it, analyze it, and if you're good, you can extract value from it. Our job is to give you a data point. Porticos has an office in Golden, Colorado, another in Research Triangle Park. It's a relatively small engineering firm. I call this a product engineering firm. We work on products, anything you intend to make a lot of, a widget. We tend to generate an awful lot of intellectual property as we work, and as with most R&D efforts like this, that belongs to our clients. It belongs to you if you end up giving me a call. We've been at this for coming up on 20 years and have done this sort of work for some of the biggest companies in the world, and certainly some of the biggest in tech. That said, the vast majority of our projects are for very small companies of less than 10 people, sometimes for individual inventors. And we are always privileged to work with clients that have a vision that others don't yet have and help them realize it. And finally, just a few examples of the sorts of things we do, from very big to very small.
Sorry, Kevin, I'm going to interrupt you here. It looks like your mic isn't working, so I'm going to hand you this.
Isn't it?
Is it on?
It's green.
You can go for that.
Okay, well, actually, that might be the end of it. This is the last slide. And Porticos.
So this is another, we're being COVID safe. Everybody has their own microphones, but I know Kevin and I are both fully vaccinated, so no concern there. Roland, you want to give yours a try here?
Yes, hello. All right. Is that working? Yeah, excellent. So Roland Ducote, I'm with Aero Electronics. I'm a programs director. Started with Aero in Minneapolis in 2000, right out of college, and so I've been with Aero for quite a while. These days, as a programs director, I work in 2 different areas. One of those is supporting organizations in a get to market. So that is helping them with engineering and design services, but ultimately we stand behind our partners. If you haven't heard of Aero Electronics, we're headquartered in Centennial, but we're a global company, 302 locations per our fact sheet, closed last year at 28.6 billion, and we've got about 180,000 customers. So helping organizations in that get to market is a big part of our activity. The other side of that is
Sorry, Roland, it looks like the lav mics are not working the way I expected, so I think we're just going to have to pass this along here. Sorry.
Fair enough. Yeah, so the other part is the go-to-market. So that is helping organizations as they have a product or solution to bring that to market. So, and we, like I said, we do that globally. I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Chris.
All right. Hi, I'm Ashley Aragoni. I'm with Quantitative Scientific Solutions, or QS2. We're a scientific and technical consulting firm with advanced data analytics capabilities. I like to say we are a company primarily comprised of subject matter experts that kind of span a wide range of different backgrounds, everything from biotech to physical sciences to energy systems to transportation and aviation, and then, of course, data science. So artificial intelligence, machine learning, optimization, operations research. We initially kind of started out with the bulk of our client work with the advanced research projects agencies. So this is DARPA, this is ARPA-E, providing technical expertise and programmatic support. In the past few years, we've also built out our own transportation and data analytics group. So Where our strength really lies is in kind of the marriage of our subject matter experts and our data analytics capabilities. So we're able to develop data science applications and kind of, as Tom was talking about, the human in the loop, we have the subject matter experts to kind of vet and understand and interpret some of the results from what we're seeing. So.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Eric Byington. I'm the Director of Entrepreneurship at Denver South, and we are an economic development organization. We're a public-private partnership, been around for over 30 years, and I am not the technical expert up here. We work more on sort of what the governor was talking about on the regional and statewide. How do we start to provide some of the resources necessary to help entrepreneurs and startups continue to grow in our region? We're really looking at how do we leverage some of our unique resources in the southern part. So we represent 6 jurisdictions that include Centennial, Greenwood Village, Lone Tree, Arapahoe and Douglas counties, and also Denver. And so we're really looking at what are some of the unique assets that we bring to this regional ecosystem? How do we continue to provide resources and connect entrepreneurs to people like we have up here with us today? We've been working with RIoT on some of their accelerator work, and how do we continue to help them come into the region? So we're really looking at some of the buzzwords, the hip words right now in the startup world, like ecosystem development and startup support. But how do we continue to develop that, leverage the resources we need in the region, and continue to really make this a really unique place to bring your startup or start your company?
Awesome. And I want to bring up our digital participant here. Eric, if you can make sure your microphone's muted, and Patrick French from Cardinal Peak should be popping up here in just a second. Patrick, can you hear us okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can hear you great. So why don't you introduce yourself and what Cardinal Peak does, and what was the last book you read? I don't know.
Well, first of all, I have to say I'm totally jealous of everybody on the stage right now because I desperately want to see a human in real life again. So just still getting my vaccination. So hopefully in another couple of weeks, I'll be able to do these things with everybody else. So looking forward to it. So my name's Pat. I'm basically business development director for Cardinal Peak. I have a technical background. And Cardinal Peak is a contract engineering firm. So effectively, we design other companies' products. We do electronics hardware. We do all the radio communications, cloud applications, the embedded software, the mobile devices, voice activation, the whole 9 yards. So when Tom was talking about those IoT devices and how they interact with everything, that's exactly what we do. So we make other companies' products.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Pat. I will call on you directly, and then we'll mute our microphone so we can see you up on the screen. But to kick off kind of some of the conversation around Industry 4.0 and the data economy, Kevin, you and I had talked about this before, but the first question that we have is what types of projects have you engaged with around the data economy, the Industry 4.0, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, anything like that Porticos has participated in? So I'm going to hand you the mic, and then just up close, it seems to be the best pickup according to my team here.
Okay, thanks for asking. Full disclosure, I asked to be the one that answered this question because I'm so excited about it. There's a lot of great answers to this in a lot of different fields, but the one that is most interesting to me is it's called machinery health, and most people haven't heard that phrase. And so I'm going to give you an example. Imagine that you're responsible for a process plant, say a refinery or something better, a pharmaceutical plant, one that makes drugs. That's a building full of equipment. It's full of pumps, compressors, heaters, agitators, all in series. And if one of them goes down, the plant goes down, and you lose maybe $1 million a day. And so for longer than any of us have been alive, the solution to that is, well, you rebuild or replace every single piece of equipment in that building on a regular schedule, once every year, once every 3, whether it needs it or not. You also keep an inventory, a copy of absolutely everything. Better? Because you can't afford for it to go down. But now in the last few years, another approach has been getting a lot of traction, and it's based very much on this Industry 4.0. The idea that you take a device about the size of your fist, the size of a beer can, with a strong magnet in the base, a vibration sensor, a thermocouple, and you continuously monitor how that piece of equipment is behaving from second to second. You transmit that data to an intelligence, a machine intelligence in the cloud. And that intelligence is able to contact you, the operations manager, and say, hey, we think that this piece of equipment has got a bad bearing and it's going to fail in 3 to 6 months. This other piece of equipment has got what looks like it might be a faulty motor winding and it's going to go out any second. Take action. That has been not disruptive because it doesn't hurt anybody. It's been transformative. It's an absolute good. And adopting that is, it's the way it's going. It's the wave of the future. Why is it exciting to me? It's getting out of heavy industry. It's moving into places I wouldn't have thought it would. We're beginning to apply this to things like the components on aircraft engines, which also have to be rebuilt on a regular schedule, unless you can have machinery health. Better answer?
Anybody else want to add to it? Yeah. Actually, bring it on.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, no, I think that, building on what you were just saying, a lot of my background is in operations research and optimization, and I have a lot of experience in the power grid, and we're moving that direction as well, right? Where, the power grid is transforming to something that's made up of distributed resources. And there's a lot of information that you have to collect about all these resources, about what they're capable of doing, about the health of these resources, and actively managing them as well. And so the power grid is absolutely moving in that direction. At QS2, we do a lot of work with in the transportation industry. So, we're talking AVs, right? We're working on building a data marketplace for the development and testing of AVs. We're also we're crowdsourcing data as well to develop standards within this space as well. So we're seeing this in a lot of places. In the intelligence community, we're building social media aggregators so that we can identify trends in extremism in military accounts, right? So we're doing so much work with bringing data in from these various sources and various devices, and there's a huge demand for this right now, right?
Caveat this here, and Eric, I'm going to ask you to turn on your microphone here. So in the Denver South region where you represent, how has that been growing in your region from an economic development perspective? Like, is Industry 4.0 as part of your vernacular now, or what's just let us know what's happening in your world there?
Well, I think first and foremost, we have organizations like Arrow, who of course are leading the way with some of that conversation with Industry 4.0. So in the corporate side of it, yes, we're seeing that language start to really, I think, take off, and more companies are looking at how do we stay up to date with what's happening, what are the latest innovations, how do we stay ahead in that game. We launched, a colleague of mine was sort of at the helm of some of this, but we launched something under our umbrella, the umbrella of our organization a number of years ago, called the Colorado Smart City Alliance. And I was involved a little bit in the beginning. I'm not quite as involved now, but one of the things I found really interesting in the early days of that was we drove kind of all over the state, and we talked to leaders at these different municipalities that we were working with. So it was Fort Collins, out to Aspen, Grand Junction, Colorado Springs. And one of the things that we heard just regularly in those conversations was, it's not about collecting the data. It's not about the sensors. The sensors are there and they continue to get better. It's more about what do we do with that data. And so I think that's where it's starting to come in more on the municipal level of, I think in some cases people are saying, help us sift through all the different technologies that are out there, make sense of what is good, what's bad, what's not something we should be using. But then it's really about, how do we make informed decisions? How do we take this data and actually do something with it? And that's where I think the Industry 4.0 is starting to take root in what the municipal level is looking at.
Yeah. Roland, you want to comment that? I imagine Arrow has a perspective on this.
Thanks. So funny enough, we just launched a new platform, and if you want to look it up, it's called the MCM, or Machine Condition Monitoring Quick Start. So what that says is real outside of a shameless plug. It's really a platform, and so when you're talking about a sensor the size of the beer can, there's all types of different applications where that can be used. So in some cases, it's going to take an organization designing their own hardware. In other cases, they're just looking to build a model. And so if you're looking to just build a model, you can take these quick starts and get things done relatively quickly. And I think that's a great message for entrepreneurs, because there are these solutions that are available to you. If you've got an idea, there's platforms out there that can support. And it's not just necessarily about the hardware, but other software providers or analytics providers, like the folks here, that can help support those entrepreneurs get their ideas to market.
Rock on. So Patrick, I'm going to call on you to kind of change the subject slightly. But how has your organization adapted due to COVID this year compared to previous ones in bringing these things to market on some of your projects?
So, the funny part about it is when we think about how has COVID impacted our operations and our people and things of that nature, almost not at all, right? I mean, it was the most non-event you can imagine. Is one day we said, hey, we want everybody to go work at home. Grab a monitor, grab your laptop, go home. And then we thought, well, we're going to lose some productivity, or this is going to be hard. And from that point of view, everything was super easy. What really we've been working on most of the time during COVID is looking and saying, what keeps our employees attached to us? What is Cardinal Peak other than a paycheck if people aren't coming to the office? How do we have that sense of community? How do we keep buddies together? How do we exchange ideas? How do we do whiteboarding? All those sorts of things. So we've actually spent a lot of effort in the last year trying on different things, company-wide stand-ups, trivia contests. We have sort of rolling topic-based 15-minute time-boxed coffees, that just have a few people to keep the employees bonded, book clubs, all sorts of things like that have helped, bridge to a remote environment. But in terms of actually doing work and having the tools that software development needs, it's been super easy. Oh, plus I see I'm on the big screen, so I got to say, I once caught a fish this big. So
you got to chuckle, Patrick. So
if you haven't seen the movie Dave, that's my recommendation.
Excellent. So, and this question kind of stems from, for those of us in technology, we've been able to pivot relatively well because we have the familiarity with the tools. I'm curious if Kevin or Roland or Ashley, if you guys have seen anything that has more of a physical requirement to be in person, if that's been heavily impacted in your industries, or how it's made your own work more difficult.
Yeah, so first, we're a global organization, so we've adhered to all state regulatory and learning communication tools, so Teams, Zoom, but similar to what Pat was talking about, things like virtual happy hours have been great. I think the one challenge has been, so trying to do ideation sessions, like where you get, in the old days, where you'd put sticky notes all over the walls. That doesn't work on Teams. So I think we've certainly learned a lot about what we can and cannot do in a virtual environment.
I can agree with and reinforce every bit of that. I'll say that Porticos works primarily with things that are physical, circuit boards, displays, heat sinks. We use a lot of tools that measure physical parameters. So there's a real limit to what somebody with a remote working setup in their garage can accomplish. We've had no choice but to structure our work environment to let the people come into the workshop that need to by clearing other people out because they don't need to be there that day. We are very fortunate that our engineers are individually entrepreneurial and really pretty creative and can do quite a bit with what they have. But eventually you've got to give somebody the tools to succeed. And sometimes those tools are an oscilloscope or a laser cutter. We've had to adapt.
Eric, what about on your side there, or Ashley, on the having economic development and then some of the more intellectual pursuits with research? How have you guys adapted?
Yeah, from sort of an operational perspective, we've been more or less business as usual. We have a lot of people who were remote anyway. But from sort of a technology standpoint, especially, this discussion about data, one of the things that we do is time series analysis and anomaly detection. And I think it needs to be said that there's going to be a lot of data that's coming out of this past year. When you're looking at time series, again, always fall back on power grid, right? Trends in demand look very different in 2020 than they did leading up to 2020. So what do we say about that as a permanent change? What do we say about that was an anomaly? That's something I think that's a really interesting question right now that a lot of industries are going to be thinking about. And as we're collecting data from the past year, we're not totally sure what that looks like going forward. So I think that's going to be an interesting question in sort of the data economy. What's a trend and what was an anomaly?
I think that's, from an economic development standpoint, one of the driving things that we're trying to figure out with our municipal partners is, what is the trend now? And in Denver South in particular, we have a lot of corporate buildings. We have a lot of co-working spaces that have been coming online. You've got spaces like we're in right now with Kiln that I think are asking this question around, Governor Polis touched on it. They were 1% remote prior to COVID, and they plan on being 20% remote moving forward. So what does that mean to workforce? What does that mean to physical space? What does that mean to the tax base for some of these municipalities? There's a lot of questions that I think are going to be at the forefront of municipal minds and the leaderships behind them, behind those cities and counties, about how do we continue to attract talent and those companies to those regions and keep them there. If we're talking about a more diversified or dispersed workforce, and then I think again it's like Governor Polis was saying, we could look at do people want to work remotely from Grand Junction and commute here 2 times a week, or work remotely completely out that way. So there's a lot of questions I think about how do we attract and keep people in the region, and then how do we build the infrastructure necessary to support that moving forward? What do we need to be thinking about differently? And I think looking to those trends around what's here to stay and what's going to be kind of the blip on the radar, and we'll continue moving on past that as COVID hopefully becomes a thing in our rearview mirror.
Excellent. Thanks, Eric. So I wanted to open it up to the audience because we're getting close to the top of the hour here. For people here, and then Tom's going to monitor the chat and then call out if there's any questions from the audience on that side. But is there any questions here before I ask my closing one, and we can close out the afternoon? Anything you're curious about from these panelists? I know we're used to going on mute and just sitting there, but Tom, is there anything on the chat side?
There was a question about how are we securing the power grid if we can't air gap it?
Yeah. So the question is, how do we secure the power grid if we can't air gap it? Which I'm hoping that's an industry term because I'm not familiar. Eric, you want to pass that to? I'm guessing Ashley because we talked about the grid.
Yeah. I am not going to claim to be an expert on sort of the the physical security of the power grid, but the information that is product of the grid is considered critical energy or critical electric infrastructure information, and it's classified as such by the Department of Defense. And so the data that's coming out of the power grid is very, very difficult to access, even from somebody who is approved to access it. So I can speak to the data being well protected from a cyber standpoint, in terms of the actual physical sensing of the grid and what that means. I think it's a little outside necessarily my expertise, but yeah, it's definitely something we're thinking about. And as again, we move from sort of centralized resources to resources that are distributed, and much, significantly more resources in magnitude, we're going to have to address some of these issues, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have one.
During this period of COVID, what industries or sectors have y'all seen really innovation and development technology, and also maybe where have you seen things fall off or do work with that?
Okay. So I'm gonna try to repeat the question. I was hoping to get a throwable mic, but I don't want to throw this. I think I get thrown. Yeah. So in the era of COVID, where have you guys in the services and the consultancy and in those realms seen things become innovative versus those that have maybe been traditionally very lucrative or very popular fall off? How's that? Good? Awesome. All right. Roland, Kevin,
Sure.
Pat, if you want to pipe in, I'm going to let Roland go first and let me know.
Yeah, so I can think of four areas. So physical security and things really around object detection. I think that's the new thing associated with physical security. To transportation, but really more around track and trace. So I want to know where my thing is and if it's hot or underwater or vibrating or doing something it shouldn't be doing. To condition monitoring. That one's been, I think, really important associated with transportation because of route-based monitoring and where organizations are doing a lot of that. They want to stop doing that. So you don't want somebody driving around in a truck in a field if they don't need to be doing that. The final one would be around retail. So there's been a lot of innovation in terms of customer engagement. So think like digital signage, but also things like analytics associated with those types of signs.
All right, I can perhaps add to that a little bit. There are things that are becoming part of every conversation, and to some extent they're not here yet. To some extent they aren't. The first is energy harvesting, another really exciting place. Energy harvesting is not novel. You've probably had a calculator for 20 years that runs on ambient light. It's just out there. But think about the environment that we put a lot of these IoT sensors on, and even some of the gateways. I held forth on machinery health monitoring earlier. Well, that's a device that is hot and it's vibrating. I mean, it's nothing but free energy. I think that's the way it's going. The second thing that comes up in almost every conversation is device level security. Network security is obviously on everybody's mind, especially right now. I'm from North Carolina. They had no gasoline because a pipeline got hacked. The fact is that it's only been 2 years since a couple of guys went to a trade show and demonstrated that they could hack an insulin pump and administer a lethal dose of insulin. And that wasn't the first time people started talking about device level security, but now nobody's not talking about it. And it doesn't matter what the piece of hardware is. It doesn't matter how seemingly harmless it might be. We have to talk about, is it using Bluetooth? What level of Bluetooth? What level of security? What mode of security? What sort of piece of equipment is it going to connect to? Should we let it connect to that piece of equipment? It can't support that security. It's another trend that I don't think is going to ever go away. It's the world we live in.
Excellent. Pat, do you want to add anything to that?
I was just going to say amen, brother, to that last statement.
There he is. We see your logo there.
Can you hear me? So I was just going to say amen, brother, to that last one. It's we spend a lot of time.
Sorry, Pat, we can't hear you here. So I think in closing, because we are at the top of the hour here, I'm going to end with something a little bit more exciting, which is exactly that. What are each of you really excited about the future? You know, that we're coming out of what I hope to be the end of a pandemic. Things are opening up. We're able to do these types of things in person and experiment and try to innovate. What levels of innovation are you getting really excited about for the future? So Eric, I'm gonna pass it over to you first, and maybe we can come that way.
Well, at the risk, I think you probably have heard a lot of people say this. I think one of the things that's exciting to me is in any challenging moment, there's always a ton of opportunity to come out of that. And I think it's incumbent upon the entrepreneurs in the world to find some of the opportunities to take what we've seen in this moment and capitalize on it, not in the way of like, let's go get rich off of it, but capitalize on how do we continue to make the world a better place, improve our surroundings based upon what we've learned from this moment. So I think that's, there's always, I think, an opportunity that presents itself coming out of something like we've just gone through for the past 12, 13, 14 months. I think on the other side of it, it's accelerated some of these conversations. So, some of the things that I know we've been talking about, and like I was saying, when we were doing the roadshow with the Colorado Smart City Alliance and digging into some of these questions, when we talked to some of our partners in Denver South about the things that they were working on, not to say that, we were sort of lulled into a sweet place, but if we're really honest with ourselves, we live in Colorado. We've got a lot of really great things going from us from an economic development standpoint. The joke was, it's not that hard to bring people here. It's why should I move my company here? It's Colorado. It's kind of the things that Governor Polis was touching on. You can ski, you can bike, you've got, you know, great cost of living for the most part. That's changing a little bit. But, you know, I think now we're sort of looking at how do we continue to take those conversations that we might have been in a sort of, you know, lull about and saying, yeah, the innovation or Industry 4.0 is coming, but what are we going to do with that? Now it's really the onus feels like is on us to really continue to accelerate those conversations. So from my perspective, and I think an economic development standpoint, it's how do we take this opportunity, leverage it to continue to improve our lives, improve the world around us, and then how do we take these things that we've been talking about for maybe 3, 4, 5 years and really come out of this moment. And I think there's going to be some energy to get back together, to start to work with one another, to start to collaborate. But how do we go out there and tackle these things at a rapid pace and get excited about the work that we're doing in leading the way with some of what Industry 4.0 could really look like?
Okay, so kind of building on that a little bit, I think one of the things I'm really excited about is that the norm seems to be transitioning away from working and expectation. Historically, we've been able to kind of get away with assuming the average in a lot of cases and being able to develop models and operational plans off of that. Recent events, you know, be it the pandemic, be it the extreme weather that we saw that caused a lot of grid outages, people are starting to think about the uncertainty associated with operating in today's world. And in doing so, you know, we need to develop the uncertainty sets that are going to dictate the models and operational planning cases that we're going to need to consider. And the development of those uncertainty sets, that's fundamentally data driven. And so I think we're in a really kind of transformative moment where we have the data and we have the tools, and we're starting to put it all together so that in real time, we're not operating in sort of a deterministic fashion. We're thinking about the possible outcomes, and we're able to build that into how we think about the future.
All right, figured it out. So I think there's two main things. To paraphrase the Microsoft CEO, Satya Nadella had talked about how there's been years worth of digital transformation in a year. And so I think there's a great opportunity for innovation from entrepreneurs, not only because there's organizations that are looking at how do we stop things like route-based monitoring, or how can I find more information about my things, but they also, I think, those organizations took the time during the pandemic to get a really good sense as to what they're good at and what they're not. And so that type of innovation is great for organizations that are upstarts that have a unique technology that they can bring it to market. And I think it's a great time for that in 2021.
The piece that I'm personally most excited about is the continuing evolution of rapid prototyping. 3D printing's been around so much, so it's trite. Everybody's got one in their kitchen. It's probably not true, but I have one in my kitchen. What I'm discovering is that rapid prototyping itself is evolving at a rate that I wouldn't have believed possible. Plastics are easy, metals are becoming easy. I discovered from a colleague just yesterday that one can now 3D print a circuit board, a 6-layer circuit board with copper. One can rapid prototype optics, believe it or not. So products that used to take months, sometimes years to get to the market, just due to the fabrication cycle, are now able to be compressed into months, and maybe a fairly small number of months. What that allows you to do is not just get to market faster, it's allow you to get a working prototype of a thing faster and find out if it's going to do what you want, or more importantly, if it's going to do what you think your market, your client base wants. That's changing the way that people do business because they're willing to try things that would have been expensive before.
Awesome. So I want to get this opportunity to thank all of our panelists here before some closing things. So thank you, everybody. I can't clap because I'm holding two different things. Really appreciate that. But in closing, I just wanted to say that this is the reason why we're able to move quickly, and the part of the reason why Colorado is such a vibrant atmosphere, and the reason people want to move here is because we have these abilities for all of us to come together from a diverse skill set to talk about innovative things and ways that we can move forward. and we have the community support to get behind those. So I just really appreciate everybody taking time out of their day, coming in and representing what Boulder Startup Week's about. And you know, the DNA of RIoT is economic development with people, because that's ultimately what drives a lot of this stuff. So I highly encourage everybody here to engage with one another, get to know what you're doing, have an ask. If you're having problems with something, there's got to be somebody in this room that can help you out. For RIoT's part, we are going to be doing a number of events here. So if this content is really interesting, in July, we're hosting an event in tandem with Denver South around the aerospace industry. So we're going to be announcing the time and location. It's going to be in July, probably July 20th in that week. But watch our website, riot.org, if you want to learn more about what the types of things that we're doing here. We have a global network, not only in Boulder, but also within RIoT. If there's an organization on the East Coast that you want to engage with, come talk to me. If there's people in and around the Boulder robotics, IoT, or any other community, also come talk to me. I'm happy to introduce you to them and have those conversations. But really just engage with one another. This is how we continue to thrive and recover in the sense of what we're doing today. You know, this wasn't a flawless event, but it's as close that we've come in the last year to really engaging with one another interpersonally. So really appreciate you guys coming again. For RIoT's part, the way that we're able to keep these free for everybody is through our partners. We have 95 corporate sponsors. So if you see your name up there, so I want to thank Porticos is one of them, Arrow is one of them, QS2 will be one soon, right? No, just kidding. Denver South has been a huge supporter of ours. So thank you so much to all of our sponsors, as well as the Boulder Startup Week. Techstars is such a huge force in the area for entrepreneurship and growth. Really appreciate them starting and continuing to sponsor Boulder Startup Week, in particular, name.com, Stream, University of Colorado, Gary Partners, and I'm totally blanking, I apologize, but they're wonderful. And that concludes our event. I really appreciate everybody coming out. Talk to one another, come talk to me, and get engaged with the community if you have any questions. So really appreciate it. Thank you so much.